Okay, welcome to Chapter 14. You should have read a document already on how to set up the Java control panel, which allows you to run Java applets from a particular website. Java applets are kind of tricky in the sense that they are not they are kind of frowned upon by your computer, even though there is some good security built in. It's kind of frowned upon, so you have to say, hey, allow these to run from this particular site. Not from any site, you have to actually point it to the right direction. And I have the instructions on how to do that. So the first thing this chapter talks about is what is an applet and what is an application. Up to this point, we've been developing applications. These are basically standalone programs that run by themselves. An applet, on the other hand, runs from a web page. So we actually have a file that's out there that is basically ready to be executed. For example, if we come out here to my workspace and I look at Hello World. Well, if I go in my SRC folder, that's my actual source code. If I double click on that, it'll open it up and it looks just like normal text. Okay, but that does not run natively within HTML. We actually have to have compiled code. Whenever we create a program in Eclipse, as soon as we do a save, if I go into the bin folder, I now have this .class file. That is a compiled program. That is now in machine language. The computer can understand that. So it's compiled code ready to be executed. And if I were to try to open this, it would look like gobbledygook. Okay. Again, you'll see some text in there, like path statements, that type of thing, but the rest of it, it's all gobbledygook. So it's basically, it's only understandable by the computer itself. So what we need to do is we need to take that applet, that .class file, and we need to upload that to somewhere along with the HTML file. The HTML file is a web page that's going to execute and actually call this HTML or this Java code. So how does that all work? Well, the applet code has to be installed on the server, which it will be, so it's meaning the same place the HTML code is ran. So when we run the web page, it will actually be able to get to that applet code and then run it. First example that it shows is this Fahrenheit and Celsius temperatures. This is just a normal web page, and down here I've got some text fields and text box. I can actually type in a code there and click on a button and it runs. This part right here is the actual Java applet. Now what you're going to see is JFrame, or basically swing data there. Buttons, JPanels, text fields, labels, all that. We can put radio buttons, we can do all that right there within that particular code. So how does this all work? Well, you've all been granted access to a website, which is https://student.midstate.edu. If you go there, it will ask for your logon information, and you'll just use your standard Midstate logon and password. And I've also included a document on how to use this thing called FireFTP that allows you to upload data to that particular website and how to log on to it and how to get it all set up. I actually have a YouTube video created as well on how to do that. So, and if I were to look at all that, it basically, so here is my particular website, MWeb, and again the rest of you have your own folder, and I've uploaded all of the different applications up here that are in this particular web page. So if we look at the book, first thing it talks about is HTML, and we're just going to talk about HTML very, very briefly. And HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So markup language meaning it uses these things called tags. So as the computer, I should say, as the browser is reading this HTML code, it looks for these tags. And so if I wanted to have a word bold, I put a tag in front of a word and then the ending tag at the end. I'm saying from here to here, anything in between there will be bolded. maybe italicized, underlined, so on and so forth. So what we need to do is have this tag stuff. So if we look at the actual source code, well, let's just do this. So I'm going to look at this basic web page 1. And if I go ahead and look at this basic web page 1, open it, it really doesn't show anything. But the one thing it does do is up here in this tag, it says my first web page. So that is the actual code. The code did that for some reason. I can actually do a right click and view page source. Now we're looking at the actual source code. So I've got this HTML tag and an ending HTML tag. It says anything between this tag and this tag is considered HTML. I've got a head tag and an ending head tag that says this is all of the header information. There's other stuff that goes inside of there besides just title, but there's other things that go in there. And then I've got this title tag. Title says whatever is in between this title and ending title tag, and it always has a slash title, that would appear in the header area or the top tag of that particular web page. So that is in the title. So if we look at basic web page 2, notice there I've got some actual text now. So if I do a right click and view page source, I now have my head, there's my title, then I've got a body. Now the body is the actual web page itself. Anything we want to put on a web page, we have to put in the body, and I have a beginning body tag and an ending body tag. Now the one thing you'll notice is it says there are 2 types of programs you can create within Java, and they go on each line by itself, but when I look at the actual code, it's just one long string of text. I'm expecting that to be broke on a new line right there. It doesn't do that. We'll explain that in a few minutes. We have to have an actual line break tag put in there. So next thing we look at is this thing called Basic Web Page 3. Now there you'll notice I have this Java. It's nice and bold. Wow, what's that all about? Well, if I look at the source code, I now have this center tag and an ending center tag. The center says anything inside these tags will be centered on the page. And then I have an H1 tag. The H1 is basically a big old text, or it formats the text a certain way. For example, in the book, it has these tags. And if I were to look at this page right here, this has got an H1, this is H1 header, H2 header, H3. Notice it's got an ending tag for each one. And when I look at it, notice that they're each formatted a little differently. So they've got their own pre-format for each one of those header tags. Okay? So pretty cool stuff there. If I look at this basic web page 4, notice that I've got here it's bolded, here's it's italicized, and look, I've got this line going across. And again, if I look at those, basically looks like this. Now if we look at the code, there I've got a P tag. Now we got P's. So a P, now notice I've got a slash in there. That slash is not required, but it is required to make it standardized code. A Every tag needs a slash, somewhere. And a P tag is what's called a new paragraph tag. And that paragraph tag doesn't have an ending, well, I guess it does. We could use an ending P tag, or we could actually do this. We could actually do P and then have a slash P at the bottom. But either way, both of those are fine. Notice I've got a B in front of the applet, so that makes it bold. And I've got an I and an ending I tag for applet, so it makes it italicized. I've got a BR tag. That's called a line break tag. That means go to a new line. If I didn't have this BR tag right here, this text would all be on the same line. So again, if we look at this guy, notice that it goes applications, breaks to a new line, then it's got N, and there's my I tag, the italicized. And then it's got this HR tag. This HR stands for horizontal rule, which means make it a line. And I can move that anywhere I want. In this particular case, it's right smack dab in the middle and separates code. So I can actually put an HR tag anywhere. And notice it doesn't have an ending tag, so what we do is we put a slash at the end of the tag. Again, it's not required, but it is required to make this code standardized. So if we look at Link Demo. Now Link Demo actually has a link to another website. So I can actually click on that and actually go to a new website. So what's going on there is, if I look at this code, it has this anchor tag, and then it's got href. Href is a parameter inside of the anchor tag. So this anchor tag says, hey, this is an anchor to basically you go to another URL. And it's got href equals double quote, and it's got a URL in there. And then it says click here to go to a new textbooks website. Notice it's got this /a, that's the ending anchor tag. It says anything from here to here will be a link, a clickable underlined link. If I look, sure enough, there it's underlined. If we look over here, we can see that the whole thing, so it looks as though I've changed it. I was playing around with it. I moved the ending anchor tag around. In this particular case, the ending anchor tag was the end of the text. In mine, again, if I look at it, we can see the ending anchor tag is basically here at the end of the line, where my ending anchor tag was right here at the end of click here. So again, we can control how things are linked around and that type of thing. So the book basically goes into each one of these things I just basically covered. Creating breaks, which is a BR tag. We can do a new paragraph with a P tag. We can do a horizontal rule with an HR tag. We can insert links with the anchor tag, the ahref tag. And then now let's talk about applets. So that's just kind of a basics on how to create HTML. Now let's talk about creating an actual applet and running it within our HTML code. And how we do that is, first let's take a look at this simpleapplet.java. So if I look at simpleapplet.java, we've got our import, our JavaX swing, and we've got an AWT, so no difference there. This is pretty much identical to our JFrame, except we're not creating a JFrame, we're creating a JApplet. Okay, so since we're extending, this entire code is now a JApplet. So it inherits everything that a JApplet has. Now we have a public void init. Now this is kind of like this is like the constructor for an applet. It says when this class is called, it's going to look for the init method and execute it. And the void says I'm returning nothing. So instead of a public static void main, I have an init method. So inside of this init, I have a JLabel. I go ahead and instantiate it as a new JLabel, and it says this is my very first applet. I set the layout to a flow layout, and then I say add label. Okay. Now notice I didn't have a width or height inside of here. Why? Well, we'll see here in just a second. If I come out here and I look at my simple applet, let's do a right click on it. Let me just double click on it. Now again, it's trying to execute this Java code, and it's all very secure, so it needs to know I've already told the Java control panel that this site's okay to execute. Now it needs my logon information from Midstate. That's my standard logon and password. And notice it's basically got this little block right here, and it says this is my very first applet. Now, where did this gray box come from? Well, if I do a right click and go to page source, you notice I've got my head, this is a simple applet. Up there you can see simple applet. There's my body, and now this is a tag. This is a tag for executing applets. It's called applet code equals, and we type the path and the file name of that class. Now, since they reside in the same folder, both the class and the HTML reside in the same folder, I don't have to put the full path in there. So it says simple applet.class. Now notice it says width 200, height 50. That's where the gray box comes in. I'm telling it, hey, the JApplet's going to use this much of the web page. Okay? I've got my ending applet, my ending body, my ending HTML. So this is 200 by 50. And that's a J label, just a standard J label. Not too bad. Now, how do we handle an event? So in the past, we've handled an event like clicking on a radio button, clicking on a button, so on and so forth, or typing in, or using a slider, all that. How do we basically utilize those same features, those events, in a JApplet? We do it the same exact way. There's really no difference. Instead of having a JFrame, though, we're going to have a JApplet. I can put panels inside of there. I can put buttons. I can put text boxes. So everything we've pretty much done in Chapter 13, we can do in a JApplet. So if we take a look at the code in the, what example are they using? They're using the temp converter. So if we look at the code inside the temp converter, so here it is. So here I've got it extends a JApplet, so this entire code is a JApplet. It inherits everything a JApplet has. We've added 3 panels, an F panel, a C panel, and a button panel. We have 2 text fields, Fahrenheit and Celsius. Here's my public void init. Again, it's a class file. When we click on the button, it basically, or when we basically call this applet in the HTML code, this is automatically executed. We call this method the build F panel, build C panel, build button panel. I set my layout to a new grid layout of 3 rows, 1 column. I go ahead and add the F panel. The add is a method that's part of the JApplet. So it adds the F panel, it adds the C panel, adds the button panel. Notice I don't have anything that says show. There's no show because it automatically just adds it and runs it, and it basically goes. So here's my build panel. So I go ahead and instantiate my new F panel as a J panel. I instantiate I create a J label called message1 and instantiate it with Fahrenheit temperature. And then Fahrenheit is my text box. I instantiate it as a new J text field that's 10 bytes wide. My F panel that I just created, set the layout to a flow layout and layout right. So it's going to basically be on the right hand side. And then I add fpanel.add the message1, which is my label, and then I add the Fahrenheit, which is my text box. My C panel, build C panel. I instantiate it. I create a label called Celsius temperature. It's called message2. My Celsius, which is my text box, I instantiate that as a new text JText field, 10 characters wide. Celsius.set editable false. So this text box I do not want you to edit. It's just for display purposes only. I set the layout of that as right, meaning it's going to be right aligned. I go ahead and add the C panel, or add the message to the C panel. I add the Celsius text box to the C panel. So now I've got my 2 panels built, my Fahrenheit panel and my Celsius panel. Then I create my button panel, instantiate as a new panel. I create a J button. It says convert on it. Convert button dot add action listener. Wow. So I can add an action listener, meaning when I click on this, execute this code. Then I say button panel dot add the convert button. So now add the button. So now I have 3 panels. And as you saw up at the beginning, we added those panels to our J applet. Then here's my button listener. It works just like a regular button listener. I've got a double F temp and C temp. Decimal format. It's got basically 1 decimal place. My F temp is a double dot parse Fahrenheit, so I get the text from the text box, convert it from a string to a double. Then I say C temp is equal to that particular calculation. And then I say Celsius, which is my Celsius text box, dot set text formatter, make sure we only have 1 decimal place, format C temp. Okay? So again, not much of a difference, not much of a difference at all from chapter 13, except for the J applet and the show. There is no show. Now if we take a look at the HTML, wrong one. Well, it's not going to cooperate. So let me go in the other way. So here it is. So here's my head, Fahrenheit and Celsius temperatures. So it's going to be, see our tag up there, Fahrenheit and Celsius temperatures. My body, so I center Fahrenheit and Celsius temperatures, H1. So let me kind of bring these both up. So here's my title, Fahrenheit and Celsius temperature centered, and it's an H1 tag. Fahrenheit and Celsius, so it basically displays this entire paragraph, but notice I've got a B Fahrenheit, so there's bolded Fahrenheit. There is a bolded Celsius, there's bolded Celsius. Come down here and I have a new paragraph, and it's italicized and actually has the actual code, the formula to do a Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion. Now this doesn't actually do the conversion, it's just there for show. It's displaying it right there. And then we have a new paragraph where F, which is italicized, and basically goes in all that. And then we say applet code temp converter dot class. The width is 300, the height is 150. So that's the gray box. There is my label, my text box. My label text box, editable or non-editable, and there is my button. When I click on it, it's going to execute the button listener. So again, if I type in a temperature and click convert, it just ran that button listener. Pretty cool stuff. And again, if I look, there is my HTML, there is my class. Okay. Now notice I got a .java. The .java is there for show. It's really doesn't do anything else, but it's just there for show. It's not needed at all. I don't know what these other 2 class files are. I think they were. I think they're needed for something else. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it for that particular half of the chapter. Again, any questions, make sure you contact me. Make sure you run that Java control panel to allow your computer to execute the code that's in that particular website. You can actually go to my web page, my MD Web folder, and actually double click on some of those HTML files and run them to see what they look like. Any questions, make sure you give me a call, and we'll see you next time.